Welcome to the next installment of App Developer Conversations. I'm Ian Sepperman, CEO of Mobile Dev HQ. I have Roby Ganguly of App1 here, and I also have Andy Stack of TechStars and Founders Co-op to my left, sitting in for the next 60 or so seconds for Ryan Morell of PlacePlay.
Yeah, I'm just a sucker for like cameras and video and talk about mobile developers.
All right, so give us one thing that we learned this week was that with iOS6. Apple basically deprecated the first generation iPad. Do you have an iPad, Andy?
I do.
Which generation do you have?
3.
3. Okay, so you bought a new one.
Yes.
How pissed would you be if in 18 months from now you could no longer get new software?
How pissed would I be? Not as pissed as I would be if certain political candidates get elected.
Okay.
Right? Like, is it really going to affect my life? Not that much, but I'd be annoyed.
Okay. How much did you spend on your?
But in the scale of being pissed, right? There's like politics. There's like the airlines who can really piss you off. And then there's software and iOS. Like, okay, I'd be annoyed.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
How annoyed would you be?
I think I'd actually be pretty annoyed. I think that those original iPads were really expensive, and it's basically breaking my iPad very, very quickly after I bought it. Right?
Yeah.
Another situation where Apple really hurts the early adopter, right?
Yeah.
Like the lesson with Apple over and over again is buy V3, and this is yet again it seems like, okay, hey, V1, you're out there in front, and it doesn't matter, you're just going to buy another one anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure they have data on that, though, right? Like, they're not making that decision, like, naively, right? Or, I mean, there's probably a portion of it that's naive, but I have to believe that they're, like, they show the repeat purchase. And, like, in general, like, I'm sort of amazed at the frequency with which, just like as I look back at my own personal and family usage of laptops, the frequency with which and comfort that I have in dropping $1,000 to $2,000 on a new laptop compared to what it was 10 years ago is just, it's a totally different purchase. And so my guess is, A, they're the emperors, B, they have data to support it, and the issue really for the developer community is like, how do you deal with that? Because they continue to make decisions that piss you guys off.
If you were a developer, how would you deal with the constant upgrade cycle? I
mean, you know, it's I think you have to deal with it, right? So, like, I think not being on iOS and just being on Android, I think there are some businesses that will be able to survive doing that, but not the majority, right? So, and from a perception standpoint, you kind of have to play in that ecosystem. I don't friggin' know. Like, they're just, you know, those are the rules of the game.
Yeah.
From the developer's perspective, it's actually in some ways nicer. It's easier because the iPad1 had hardware limitations. It didn't have a lot of RAM. So as a result, if you're thinking about backwards compatibility to the iPad1 for all of your iPad apps, and then Apple says, nope, that's deprecated in iOS6, you don't have to support that because we're not. Yeah, it's like one less thing on your plate.
Yep.
On that, I'm going to excuse myself and let an expert stand in my place. But thanks for inviting me. Happy to be a guest another time.
Our first guest.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Another world.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I think is interesting here is about the data of upgrade cycles is you can probably, like, I had an iPad1 and then I upgraded to iPad3, and people are it's probably in every other upgrade cycle. So I think the valid question here for developers is, are the people still using iPad1 the people you want? Right? Are they the ones that are spending a lot of money?
Yeah.
Because they might not be, right? They might be the guys that are like, I just use this for the web and playing solitaire.
That's interesting.
And I would guess that it's a theory and assumption, but I guess that probably holds.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I would love to see data on that because I think you might be right there.
Yeah. Well, and you can look, right? So we have some old apps from a previous life. We could look to see what percentage are iPad1 versus iPad3. So I'll look. Maybe we have 10 users on iPad,
Yeah.
so it'll be like, it won't matter.
So that's really interesting about, you know, deprecating the iPad1. But now we're also hearing all the rumors about the iPad Mini. We're about to get into the situation where we will have 4-ish different iPads, different resolutions, different form factors. How does a developer start to think about, is there even internal fragmentation within iOS now?
Yeah, clearly. I think, though, the rumors are that the iPad mini will have the same resolution as the iPad 2. Right? So if that's the case, then that doesn't really create that big of challenges. But still, like you're probably going to have to do something, right? So games don't necessarily just scale down or scale up, or any app for that matter. So now you've got iPad1 users who may or may not be spending money. You should look at your own data to identify that. So they're on iOS 5 or whatever it is. You got to support that. iPad 2 and iPad mini on iOS 6, and then iPad 3 and the different hardware. It's like, oh boy, now we've got some challenges. And so one question, and you talked a little bit last week, Ian, about like potential Apple things, but is there someone in a corner at Apple concocting a plan to make it hard enough to support iOS, but they make enough money that developers go, I'm not going to support it. Well, I'm not going to do anything else, right? Because it takes all this work to support me, iOS, so we're just not going to deal with Android at all. That'd be that's uber evil.
That would be evil. I hope there's nobody doing that. If that's you at Apple doing that, come on, throw some money.
Or give us a call and we can maybe fix some stuff together.
Yeah, exactly.
Take checks.
What do you think about fragmentation issues?
I think it's inevitable. I now envision a world where there are 8 or 9 mirrored screens somewhere throughout my house of varying sizes, all with an Apple logo on them, and it scares the crap out of me. It's like, here's your iPad fork, your iPad spoon, your iPad. You're like, what? There's 12 different sizes. One's a 46-inch screen.
Right.
One's a 30-inch monitor, and they're all running iOS at that point, right? But it's iOS that's so hard to support from a developer's perspective. It seems like that's inevitable, but man, the world's getting more complicated for people developing on Apple platforms than ever before.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, thanks. That concludes this week's installment of App Developer Conversations. Look for the others. If I'm a developer and I'm choosing the platform, I'm choosing the one that actually has traction and people are excited about, and that's not yet Windows 8. I think that I could get excited about it easily if they start to get the traction.